Okay, today we'll be diving into Petropavlosk, the tier 10 Soviet heavy cruiser in World of Warships, known for robust armor, precise guns, and excellent survivability. So let's go over what makes Petro unique, why is it the most popular ship in clan battles, and how you can maximize its potential in battle. Petropavlovsk, or Petrobalsk, how I like to call it, is built to be a superior close-range brawler. It has some of the best characteristics of Soviet cruisers, with heavy armor, great guns, and radar. So let's take a quick look at its key stats. Even though Petro was heavily nerfed throughout the years, its main battery still stands as one of the greatest 220mm in the game, with high AP penetration of AP and 50-degree upgraded pen angles. All 3 turrets of Petro are also 360. Soviet 12km radar, even though with pretty short duration, is excellent for the tier. And we cannot forget about the amazing borderline BB-like armor of Petropavlovsk, especially with 40mm deck that can withstand most HE shells, icebreaker nose, and low citadel with very little superstructure as well. In terms of AA, we get the standard Soviet AA of 6.6 km range. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of the ship? Petro has great armor for a cruiser, especially around the citadel. It's difficult to be citadeled at medium to long ranges, especially when you angle properly. Shape of the armor often leads to many shells bouncing even on angles where other cruisers would not stand a chance. High quality of AP shells on Petro comes from combining great penetrating power and the upgraded angles, making it effective against cruisers and battleships at close to medium range. The 12km radar is amazing for spotting destroyers and contesting caps, especially when you notice that on Tallinn and Riga it's borderline stealth radar. In terms of accuracy, Petro has improved dispersion on close range, making it very deadly in brawling situations. On longer ranges, the ship can still punish broadsides, but with a little bit less consistency. Ship's AA is also generally very strong, and in contrast to ships like Moskva and Kremlin, does not break that easily. So what are the weaknesses? Well, first of all, it's gonna be the high detection range of Petro. The concealment on this ship isn't great, making it vulnerable when repositioning, especially after recent nerfs that extended it from 12.4 to 13.2 kilometers. Poor HE performance of Petro is also noticeable. The HE shells are mediocre at best. Petro needs to rely heavily on its AP. Slower rudder shift and turning radius mean that it's not the easiest to dodge torpedoes or incoming shells. However, you don't need to worry that much as you have hydro and, previously mentioned, amazing armor. And lack of torpedo armament in duels on point-blank range, this might result in your doom. Now let's go over commander skills and builds. Petro benefits from almost everything you put on here. Depending on your preference, you can build it in many ways. Here are 2 extremes. Aggressive, with focus on AP shell, damage and reload, with strategy being, well, they cannot kill you if you kill them faster, and defensive, focusing on survival and tanking aspect of the ship, being more like you shall not pass than actual kiting cruiser. Usually the best for many will be something down the middle of these roads. Build for Riga is identical to build for Petro, however for Tallinn we need to focus a bit more on HE, due to the fact the ship has only 180mm guns. In terms of upgrades and modules, for slot 1 we go for main armaments modification 1, for slot 2 I highly suggest you go for surveillance radar mod to boost the radar duration. But if you do not really want to invest in that, just go with damage control mod 1. For slot 3, aiming system modification 1 is absolutely the best choice. Tightens dispersion, increase accuracy, amazing. In terms of slot 4, I suggest propulsion mode. As a standard, you can try to experiment with the turning one. In terms of slot 5, you need the concealment system modification one. It's a must-have. You need better concealment to utilize your radar more efficiently. In terms of slot 6, honestly, almost anything works. For very aggressive legendary mode, straight up the best pick if you want to go hyper aggressive. For majority of the people, reload mode will be the ideal one, but for some, range mode is a viable choice too. Petro line is one of the best ones to put the unique commander Kuznetsov on, especially if you run the aggro build. His perk for the first blood, giving +1 to all consumables, can counteract the downside of legendary mode. While the first time you will die in battle you don't, perk makes it even harder for you to get rid of. In terms of Petropavlov's gameplay tips, positioning in early game. Initial positioning of Petro is around islands or behind cover. Use the radar to help spot and deter enemy destroyers from pushing into caps. In terms of angling, always use your armor, especially against battleships. Petro can tank well when positioned correctly, but it's very vulnerable to broadside hits. Not as hard as other cruisers, however. The ideal angle for Petropavlovsk is so that you make sure that the 40mm plating is the one that you showed the enemy the most, with the 25mm on top of the nose and on the aft is borderline not visible, or when you angle yourself in a way so that when the enemy with overmatch shoots at your 25mm plating on the top of the nose, it can result exclusively in overpen. Kiting is possible with Petro and the 360 guns allow it, but I do not recommend it due to how big 25mm plating on the aft is. You should almost never do that, however there are some exceptions to that, such as when you notice that there is a lot of secondary battleships that want to push you straight on. In terms of mid-game tactics, you need to start coordinating with your teammates and use your radar to catch enemy destroyers by surprise. Petro's radar range allows you to stay at safe distance while spotting threats. You also need to remember that even though you're very durable, HE does not care about your angling, so secondaries can eat your 25mm nose alive. Try to avoid prolonged trades with ships that have high HE pen, such as Goliath or Hindenburg, as they wouldn't care even for your 40mm midsection. Island hugging at this point should be used to either surprise enemy ships with sudden moves or just to take a quick break in order to heal. Late game plays. At this stage of the game you want to close the distance. Petro's close range accuracy can be very effective. Push closer to isolated targets and take advantage of your AP. Use your radar to secure map control over objectives or spot isolated destroyers in the final minutes. You need to start prioritizing positioning to minimize potential crossfires. Keep in mind your cooldowns on heal, radar and hydro. In terms of tech tree, Petro branches out of Nevsky's tech tree starting at tier 8 with Tallinn and followed by Riga. These two are much different from each other, however. Whilst Riga resembles more of a smaller Moskva and can be played almost identical to Petro, but you just need to be slightly more careful, Tallinn is something else. She is more just a standard kiting cruiser, resembling ships like Hyper or Mogami more than what the tech tree is later on. Cannot forget that you still have the long range radar and upgraded AP, so make great use of them. Okay, now for do's and don'ts on Petropavlovsk. From do's, do angle and use your armor. Petro is tough and you can survive much more than your teammates. so make sure you put your value there. However, don't forget you're not invincible. Do time your radar. Catch enemy destroyers by surprise and support your teammates. Even though in World of Warship's teammates are not the greatest most of the time, they're still the only ones you can count in the battle, so try at least to put them into some use. Do use AP. Your AP is the most powerful piece of your arsenal and you should use it as your main ammo type. It works even against angled targets. And in terms of don'ts, don't show broadside. I think this is the simplest thing all cruiser players should know. Petro's armor is strongest when angled. Avoid giving enemies an easy shot at your citadel. Don't rely on HE. Your HE shells are not your strong suit. Use them almost exclusively against destroyers. Don't overextend. Petro is a strong tank, but you lack maneuverability, so overextending is deadly for you. And last don't forget, other ships also might have upgraded properties that can counter you. Such, for example, Des Moines has 60-degree upgraded pen angles, so standard angling against cruisers won't work against Des Moines. If you face cruiser like Des Moines, you need to make sure that you're more bow into her rather than angled, as the 60-degree upgraded AP can really hurt you. Okay, that wraps up our guide for Petro. This Soviet cruiser can be a dominant force for people with hands and couple brain cells, so use the right tactics and positioning. Remember to stay angled, utilize your radar, and focus on close to mid-range engagements. With practice, you'll be able to take full advantage of what this ship has to offer. And I think that regardless of how Wargaming will nerf this ship in the future, it's still gonna be a great ship to use in competitive, such as clan battles. Like and subscribe if you found this to be helpful and you're craving for more. See you next time. Silent out.